Hello, welcome to another episode of the podcast. So, today I'm going to talk about my 365 days to a handstand journey that I did last year. So, that began in January 2021, and I was 51 at the time. So, from age 51 to 52, because my birthday's at the end of November, I learned how to do a free standing handstand. And there's a lot to say about this, but at the same time, I don't really know where this conversation is going. So I did ask if anyone had any questions about it. And the questions that came up were things that I was going to talk about. So, and I feel this may even be a two-parter because there's a person who was really essential to this journey because this wasn't a journey for me to go on my own. So Damien Norris is the guy. he is he is the reason why I chose to do 365 days to a handstand. He was the coach, the guide, and although we'd had a kind of online friendship, I feel our friendship was really cemented during this year. And that's what happens when you get a really good coach. So why did I want to do this thing? So number one, I don't know anything about handstands. I like movement, I like play. All my years in the parkour world, the the kind of, the people who were really good at parkour also happened to be really, really good at handstands. And it was something that I never saw them train. It was something I never saw them talk about. It was the thing they would do at the train station after a day of parkour would be like their who can hold their handstand for the longest. And their handstands are beautiful. And they go and check their handstands by doing handstands on the edges of tall buildings and things like that. So I know that like there's more to this than the physical aspect. Like there's a mental game in the handstand. There's an emotional game, as there is with all movement, because movement is emotional. So I always admired this movement, but it had never really kind of been like anything that I'd really wanted as a project. I also grew up with a dad who would do handstands on the edges of diving boards, and I thought as a kid that that's just what all dads did. And my dad was very physically strong. He's a nuclear physicist, so he's like strong body, strong mind, clever guy, amazing. And so I grew up with one parent who was very athletic and strong. And at the same time, my mum has never done a forward roll in her life. She took up tennis at one point and now she plays golf and she's going to be 81 in a couple of days and is in amazing, amazing health. So, yeah, handstand. So as a kid, I would be, I would kick up against the wall and do a handstand against the wall. And then, you do cartwheels and things like that. And then you kind of stop doing that. And roll back a few years, Kirsty, who used to be with GMB, she was very inspiring to me watching her handstand. So there was always this, association of if you're doing handstands, you're strong. And at the same time, I always thought handstands were kind of a party trick because I'd only ever seen people do them in a very playful way. And at the same time, you go and see Cirque du Soleil or something like that, and it's just wow, to see someone do one-armed handstands and things like that. But there had always been this very sort of derogatory kind of thinking about it around the kind of natural movement world, the functional movement world of, well, that's party tricks, da 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 da. If you don't escape a burning building by being able to do a handstand. But I'm going to circle back to that because there are attributes and there are crossovers and everything is connected. So I saw this thing on YouTube. So Damien very, very generously decided, no, it wasn't on YouTube, it was on Facebook. He put up on Facebook, who wants to do it? It's free. Follow me. I'm going to guide you 365 days to a handstand. And I just thought, why not? That'll be a nice project. And I hadn't had a long project for a year or so. Just before COVID, I'd done the couch to 10K. I trained for the race. I'll never run. So, and that started again through friendship. That was through visiting my dear friend Mary Beth Kanjemi, and her daughter had were kind of running. I think they were at like week 3 or 4, and so I just kind of started, and I was having kind of hormonal joint stiffness. I felt like the Tin Man at the time, and I managed to kind of hobble my way through, like, I jog for a minute, walk for 3 minutes, and I really enjoyed that shared experience. And then when I came back home from visiting them, I carried on, and I would share, and I would take a picture of me and Pax after our run every day, and I would send that to Mary Beth. And I felt like I was still running with Mary Beth and Michaela, and it became a shared thing. So although I'm an introvert, I really like shared experiences as well. So 365 days to a handstand seemed like a fun project, and it was a year. So it's like, so nothing can be too hectic when it's spread over a year. And I like that because it has to fit in with my life. It has to not be extreme. And I thought, well, that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting. And I know enough about movement to know that if we're going up for a year, then we're going to ease in. And then it's going to continue to be these. And I know that you can really achieve incredible things over the period of a year. I went from having like no pull-ups to 5 pull-ups in, I think it was 3 or 4 months. And my motivation was that Chris Roat was going to give me his purple resistance band, that I was allowed to keep it. He'd lent it to me and I was allowed to keep it if I got my 5 pull-ups from between May and September. So I'm obviously motivated by things that are friend-based, are shared, and aren't going to be too extreme or hectic or upset my life, and they're gradual, and I like that. And there's something about that kind of approach. It's like gardening or something. It's like you're not going to see anything immediately, and therefore you don't get a sense of disappointment immediately. Therefore you're still like, you've got skin in the game. All you've got to do is keep turning up. So what I loved about this was I didn't know shit about handstand. So there was a very clear, like, there was no ego of mine in this game. And I generally don't have movement ego. My ego lies in the creative intellectual fields of life. They don't happen in the movement world, which is such a gift when it comes to my movement kind of life and experience that I share. So also what's really important is, who was the coach? So Damien's doing his PhD into rewilding, and we've been having some really lovely conversations about what that is, about phenomenology. He's someone who had read my PhD, he'd read my book, and had thought about it, because PhDs are really about thinking. There's a lot of thinking that happens. So he thought really hard about a lot of subjects that are, or is still in the process of thinking really hard about a lot of subjects that are very dear to me, that interest me, about nature, about presence, about phenomenology, about movement, about where that movement happens, what that movement is, who are the people that we get to see who celebrate movement, what are the messages out there about movement, what are the different movement worlds that we follow, and who are the leaders in that, and who gets what to say, and who are these kind of egos and all this stuff. So in the background, Damien and I have been having these really cool conversations that I love and thrive, and I kind of crave that, again, this kind of meeting of intellectual and this philosophy of movement, and living this philosophy of movement, not just thinking about it and writing about it. And some people do that really wonderfully, but to live it as well. So I really, really like that. So it was like, okay, all these things came together. Okay, long project, check. Coach who I think will be a great communicator, who I respect and feel comfortable to communicate with, check. Do I want to do a handstand? I want a party trick. I have no party tricks. I thought, oh, I'm going to get a party trick. This will be really nice. And no equipment, free. All I need is a flat space of ground. And I also wanted something that I could do in different moments that would feed a different thing. So but at the same time, I didn't know what this was going to involve. I didn't, some of the reasons why I got into this um, turned out to not be what it was. So I thought handstands were more balance than strength. That was wrong. As Damien educated me. So handstands are 70% strength, 30% balance. I always kind of pride myself that my balance is pretty good. But what kind of balance? What environments are those balances in? So we began. And I think there were quite a few of us who would then post on Facebook. And so there was an accountability as well. So January 1st, there I was. And so it began. How did it begin? 3 1-minute planks every day. That's doable. And then it became more. But those planks, we stayed at for a really, really long time. And then the planks got more interested. Then the planks became elevated planks. And I remember I had a friend visiting who's a strength coach, and I actually went to a gym, and it was the first time I'd been in the gym for a few years. And at the end of the session, I was like, oh, hang on a minute, I've got to do my planks. It was like, what are you doing? And I was saying, no, now I'm on elevated planks. And then when I was at home, I would take the cushions off the sofa. And so I would have my feet on the kind of base of the sofa, not on top of the cushions, but the base of the sofa. And then in this plank. But it also wasn't a plank as I'd been doing before. It was really this kind of reverse hollow body plank. It was this like squeezing, it was this tightness, it was this recruitment of everything together. It was a plank that made you tired. It wasn't a lazy plank. It wasn't, well, I'm just up here on my wrists and I'm standing here. So it was interesting to begin with. And what I really liked was when everyone was showing up. And that was really cool. And that was really nice to begin with. And then over time, some people like more shared or didn't share. And then more things started to happen. So what was really cool, and Damien was doing this. He was setting the videos he was recording. It wasn't like he had this kind of I think he had it all written down on paper, but he was recording the videos as we went along, and he was doing them with his son. So his son Remy, I believe, was 4 to 5, I think, during that year, if I've got my memory right. So Damien's a really great athlete. His mum was a dual Olympian. He was an elite gymnast. He's an elite mover now. And yet he has this humbleness, this humility, and he doesn't have an ego around his practice. And that can be really, really rare. So our handstand practice was made fun. My coach was having fun because he was also kind of coaching and doing it with his, let's say, 5-year-old son at the time. So if a training can be made fun for a 5-year-old, it can be made fun for a 51-year-old. And that really resonated with me. He was at home, he was in his lounge, he was doing things on the floor, and then he got to doing things against walls or doing things on the rug or the carpet and things like that. And so it really, really made a difference that my coaching was fun. The thing that I was just looking at and watching and trying to be like and do was fun. And to see this beautiful relationship between father and son of just honesty was really, really refreshing as well. And the which doesn't detract from any of the the amazingness of the coaching. So the journey starts, the months pass, and I'm not thinking about handstand. I'm just thinking about showing up. I'm just thinking about, oh, what does Damien and Remy want us to do now? Like, oh, what's Remy doing? And how, and you can see like kids get bored. So they'll kind of half do it, half not do it, have fun with it. And yet all the teaching came through, all the coaching came through. And what was really important, and what I've noticed in what works for me, and also what I've noticed as a coach for other people in other movements, is when you communicate, when you show up, when you give feedback, you connect more. When there's more connection, you're more likely to stay motivated because nobody else was really interested in what I was doing. And for most people, when I say to them, have you ever felt really supported in your movement journey or in your training? Most people say, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know what that would feel like, and no. And they may have amazing coaches. They may go to amazing classes. But here's the thing, people get bored, even if it's your partner, your best friend, even if it's someone who's following you, who a year later says like, oh, I watched that journey and that was really inspiring to me. And I was like, wow, that's kind of amazing. Like it wasn't on my mind. So I shared a lot of my journey. So I would film what I was doing. And this did two things. It meant I could see what I was doing as opposed to what I thought I was doing. So it gave me the harsh reality of like, okay, this is it. Or, like, oh, I thought my legs were straight. No, they're not. Or like, oh, I thought my back was tilting that way, but it's not. Interesting. Um, and then there was also, it was just interesting and kind of vulnerable at times to share that. But the other main reason was, and especially when a new move was posted, I would film it and then I would send it to Damien if I had questions, because I can't write and describe it. Okay, well, I mean, you can, but there's nothing like eyes on the whole body. So, I was comfortable with my 3-minute planks. Then we did the raised planks. And I was training a client in person at the time, and he did them with me. And he actually had a kind of a lot more upper body strength than I did at the time. And I incorporated this into all of our training. And for him, it crossed over into his surfing as well, which was really, really lovely. And he could do handstand push-ups against the wall better than his 20-year-old son. And he was 58. So that was a good one for him as well. So the elevated planks started to feel demanding. But Damien also had this great strategy of we would do 6 weeks on, take 1 week off. And straight away, I felt the crossover in my shoulders, in my wrists, in my core, in all the other stuff I was doing, because I really like doing groundwork. I like doing parkour. I was surfing more at the beginning of last year, and I felt it. And I wasn't thinking, it was kind of like, oh, it's my handstand practice, but I wasn't thinking about the handstand. I just thought about showing up. I just thought about like, oh, wonder what we're going to do today. And because it was fun, I never had to give it any more thought than that. And it only really took 10 minutes, like 10 to 15 minutes. And what I realized is that I felt really good. It was like I gave myself a little like check, little gold star on the chart of Julie's World when I did it. Did I do it every single day? No. Did that matter? No, because I did it most of the time. And then when I didn't do it, I just went back to doing it. It wasn't a big deal. And before recording the podcast, I posted on Facebook that if anyone had any questions about this process. And a couple of the questions were, how do you continue when you lose your way? So it depends how lost you are. So, for example, in the middle of the year in July, I went twice actually. So in May, I went on my first solo car camping trip to Utah. And I was away for 10 days. I did not do one moment of my handstand training. Not one. I was hiking, I was camping, I was lifting things, I was moving. I did a lot of driving, and I didn't worry about it because my life has movement in it anyway. Whether that's, it has gentle movement. So every day I walk with my dog for at least an hour and a half a day, spread out over the day. I do other things. I'm kind of active. Like I'm not sedentary in life. And at the same time, I know that the ground movement I do does a lot of good things for the wrists and the shoulders and the core and all those things. Um, and I would just come back from my trip really happy and excited to to begin again, just to check in, be like, oh, I wonder where I'm at. Because knowing that it's a year, knowing that like, okay, there's 365 days. Okay, I lost 10. So what? Like it can't be that crucial. It can't be that hard. So I would always just check in with like, oh, where am I at? And I also know from both observation of seeing how other people have been away from something for a while and when they come back to it, technique and strength are things that you can get back pretty quickly if you've kind of got a baseline of them. So rebuilding strength, if you've had strength for several years, is much easier than the beginning of your journey of building strength because your body just gets better at doing it. It just kind of knows. Like you're going to go through that, like, oh, that was, I felt a bit stiff and tired, but you're just going to know. So I think it's really important just to have a reframe of I just didn't give much currency to the fact that I'd been away from it. What I gave currency to was, have I been active? Have I been moving? And the answer was generally yes. Like I think if I'd been, in bed sick with COVID or the flu for 2 weeks, then I would have been more concerned, or I would have been a little bit more apprehensive of, oh, am I off track? Am I this or that? But just to come back after doing normal life felt normal because it had become part of normal life, was just like, okay, I do this, or I do my movement snacks, and then I would just add the handstand training onto that, or I would incorporate some of that, or that would my handstand training would become my movement snack at different times of it. So the year's moving on. I'm just doing what he tells me. I'm seeing him have fun with his son, and I'm feeling changes happen for me. I'm feeling that when I do my groundwork, things are changing. I'm feeling it in my surfing. I'm feeling it in my posture. And I'm having fun with it. And then he would set something new. And it would be like, oh, 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 hang on a minute. That looks more demanding. And so I would film it. And sometimes there would be things and it would be like, no, that scares me. That scares me. So I think that one of the first times that happened was there was a drill where so we've gone from an elevated plank to kind of holding our legs against the wall. So your kind of tummy and face are facing the wall. So as though you kind of crawl back up the wall, but only a little way. And we've been kind of there. So you're sort of walking like from the side up to the wall, down to the other side. And then came the one where you had to jump. So like a kind of bunny hop from the ground up to the wall. And I can't remember if we went back down the other side, or I think back down the other side. And the commitment to have both feet leave the floor, kind of reverse bunny hop up to the wall, and then down the other side. I was just like, oh no, that scares me. That scares me. So I used my kind of, the parkour just idea of like, okay, how do I overcome this obstacle? How do I break the jump? How do I break the bunny hop jump? This scares me. So okay, we'll just do it with the feet, and then like do it. It was as though I was training a precision jump, which is where you jump from one thing to another and you land very precisely. Generally, it's a kind of two-footed jump, or it can be like a running jump, but you land on 2 feet in this exact precise spot. So I would do it kind of like stepping with the feet, like landing, like so from the ground, step up 1 foot, step up the second foot, first foot then goes back to the ground, second foot goes back to the ground. And then I would do that. So this was this sort of like, as Stefan de Grue calls it, like just awaken the touch. So I'm telling my nervous system, my body, and my brain, like, nothing bad happens when we go here. Because in my imagination, when I'm scared of something, it's like, oh, all my teeth are going to fall out. I'm going to break my neck. I'm going to break my ankle, and that is going to ruin my life. And somehow, if I do this thing, like insert imagination, 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 I'm destitute and homeless, and I've also ruined other people's lives. Like, that's how extreme my thought process of how to get from A to B can look and feel in my body. So I have to tell it, nothing bad happens when we go here. Nothing bad happens when we go here. Nothing bad happens when we go here. So I would do this process of just awaken the touch and ease in. And then it's not a conscious, like, okay, I'm going to commit to doing it now. Your body, you know when your body's ready. You know when your nervous system is calm. You know when you're fatigued. We do know, but we don't always listen, or we're not always attuned to that ability to listen. But that's something that I've really honed in on over the years. And so, and I'm filming this all the time. I just set my iPhone up, my little tripod, and I would film so that I could see what I was doing. And also I could then send to Damien and ask questions. And so this one scared me and I filmed it. And the first rep was this like, awaken the touch. And then it came. And it came really quickly and it kind of amazed me. And every time there was something that scared me, I would send it to Damien. And his observations were pretty much the same, which was, oh, you just need to get stronger in ABC. And it happened time and time and time again. So the reality I was faced with, which is something that we can rationalize and think, well, yeah, that sounds obvious, is, but we don't always have the experience to back it up. And we don't always see that transition in real time to be able to connect the dots of cause and effect, is that our level of fear of doing something has a direct correlation to our physical strength and capacity to do it. So when different body parts got stronger, my fear dissipated. The more that happened, the more that I went through this process of, oh shit, that scares me. The look of that scares me. I'm trying it. Okay, I'm scared whilst I'm doing this. Okay, I'm taking baby steps towards it. I'm calming my nervous system. I'm doing it. Oh shit, oh wow, I just did it. Then I got stronger. Then it didn't scare me. That was the process that happened over and over and over and over again in the 365 days to a handstand. The only injuries I had were due to my phone and typing. So we did a lot of wrist and strength work with the fingers. And what I realized was at times, and it was always the right hand. Why the right hand? Because I'm holding my phone, because I'm texting on my phone. I was doing a lot of marketing for my work on social media at the time and posting a lot of things. And just this process of the position of the phone, typing, doing stuff with my thumb, holding it, typing with my fingers, all of those things, it was like, shit. So I had to then get good with the phone. I had to then do stuff for my fingers. I had to then do stuff for my wrist. So I had two visitors stay with me at that during that year who were both amazing hand balancers. So Cameron Prato came to visit. I hadn't seen Cameron for, I think, 4 years maybe. And one of the things I said to he was saying like he hadn't really, trained a lot in anything for a good while. And I said, yeah, but are you still ridiculously good at handstands? And he went, oh yeah. And so I said, okay, can we do some drills? And at that time I was in the journey. I was doing we were doing the crow yoga pose where you balance kind of on your kind of bent elbows and you're sort of leaning forward. And it was really lovely to have someone in person just to kind of go through. So we filmed it and we just went down on the docks. We're actually on a moving surface, which potentially isn't ideal, but hey, adapt. And Cameron just took me through his kind of warm-up drills and doing stuff. And then what I wanted to film and show in the clip, which I had a really nice response to, was sometimes we compare ourselves to other people instead of just meeting ourselves where we're at. So what the clip was Cameron did what he needed to do in his handstand training that day, and I did what I needed to do. And what that looked like was Cameron went up into a handstand. I held his handstand, bent his legs, and then started playing with his legs, just making different shapes. I went into a crow pose, and I held the longest crow I'd ever done on that clip on that day. I think I did 40 seconds, which was like, wow, amazing, amazing, amazing. Like the strength was building. I was feeling it. I could feel my whole body changing from a little bit of this new thing happening on a very regular basis. And as Damien would say, this is just the SAID principle in action. So specific adaptation to intensified demands. Do it over time. And so Cameron and I were exactly where we needed to be in our own movements. So that was really fun. Later on in the year, my good friend Jared Tavasolian came to visit, another amazingly annoying, great coach who's good, who happens to be ridiculously good at hand balancing. And so Jared doesn't really practice his handstands anymore, but he can knock out a like 1-2 minute handstand on a bad day. So that was really fun. So it was nice to be able to start to share in person these things, even though I was nowhere near, and still I'm not anywhere close to where they were at. It was just a shared experience. So that was really cool. So I didn't have any kind of notion of comparison. It was really just simplify. Just don't overthink it. Turn up, have fun with it. And the more that Damien would turn up and have fun with it, the more that I would turn up and have fun with it. So I think it's really also anything you want to do. One of the lessons is like really, like if you want to learn something, know what your style is and find someone who's going to resonate with that style. Because I can tell you, if someone else could have given me the exact same drills but their delivery, if it had just been like, okay, today do this, this, and this. If you don't do it, you're weak. Blah, 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 blah. I'd have just been like, yeah, fuck off. I just wouldn't have, like, there wouldn't be any fun with it. And yet the training is the same. So fun is a big motivational factor for me. Good energy, humility, lack of ego. If it's made fun for a 5-year-old, it's made fun for me. That's my style. That may not be your style, but know your style. And I can respect the other ones. And I can turn up and I can do them every now and again. But if you want me to turn up for a year, who do I want to hang out with for a year? I want someone who's fun. I want someone who's knowledgeable. I want someone who is compassionate and patient. I knew it was going to be patient because it's a year. And consistency. So my coach's consistency was a reflection of my consistency. So when I would see a new video, I'd be like, oh shit, okay. So I would have these breaks, but I have an active life. So, and I would say to Damien, like, oh, I haven't done anything, haven't done any of that. And he'd be like, okay, no worries. Just go back to the thing you were doing and just check in with that. And I would check in with that. So I would maybe spend an extra week doing the last thing that I did. And then I would go, and then you're kind of on track. And also, I never really knew, other than the videos that he would send, I didn't really, other than him telling me, like, you're really on track, which was really nice to hear, I didn't know what the track was. So there was this giant trust in the process. And the only thing I had to trust in myself was to turn up. And because I had really regular feedback, it also wasn't an issue of, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Will I ever get it? It was still like the freestanding handstand was still such a distant thing. And the training we were doing didn't look like handstand. I don't think it was until October. So it wasn't until kind of month 10 that we even kicked up to a wall in something that kind of looked like a handstand. It was like, wow, oh, now we're doing handstand. But by the time that happened, it was a very unique kick up a wall to any kick up a wall I'd ever done in my life before. So this preparation, this patience, this whole year was a process of delayed gratification. And that was this kind of huge gift was just trust in the process and show up. So one of the questions, and I posted, like I said, and I said, Damien, do you have any questions about this? And he said, like, what was the unexpected gift? And the unexpected gift was to really, the whole experience embodied for me that building strength, increasing your health, achieving your goals is a constant process of delayed gratification. That if you trust in the process and you find a guide and you have compassionate and patience, support and accountability, you can achieve anything. They need to be the expert in their field. They need that expertise to be able to guide you, to be able to kind of adapt. And I think the other big knowledge was this connection between fear and physical capacity, that your body knows when you can do something, and the messages of fear can be muted really, really quickly once you build a stronger physical base. That our musculature, our tissues, our tendons are linked to our confidence. They are directly linked to the levels of fear that we carry through our everyday life. Our body knows unconsciously what we can and cannot achieve and adapt to. That was huge for me during this process of turning up to do something, being scared, becoming strong enough, deleting the fear. So this ability to delete fear through physical strength and capacity was like, wow. And I thought I was just doing party tricks. I thought I was just like moving towards this party trick thing. One of the other things that was really interesting was this sense of identity of being someone who can do a handstand. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I grew up seeing my dad do handstands. And then, my return to a love of and joy of movement through researching parkour, I was surrounded by elite movers who, handstands were their kind of party tricks. And I never put myself, and then you see the kind of like, it's always like the skinny yoga woman who are amazing at handstands. And it's a kind of a cliche, like the handstand against the beautiful background. And like, do you know what though, if there's a beautiful background, I'll go and do a handstand, no shame. I'm proud of my handstand. I earned it and I love it. And so I never saw me as I'm someone who can do a handstand, because my self-identity was never like, well, I'm strong. I'm not, I don't identify as that. And there was a moment, God, I'm feeling emotional. I just remember, and I knew I was going to talk about this, but I didn't think it would hit me when I talked about it. There was a moment during the year when later on, so Damien's mum, as I said, was a dual Olympian. And he would share some pictures of her, because I would say like, oh, what about the banana back thing or this? And he said, oh, that's a distinct style and that's this and that. And it was fantastic. And I think I shared with my mum at some point, like that I was doing this handstand thing. And one morning I was going to go outside and do my handstand practice. And I thought of my dad. And I burst into tears. and and it was kind of this connection, or then this project became like I was speaking to my dad, like, "Hey, Dad, check my handstand," or like, "Wow," I had this appreciation of this strength that he had in his life. Like, I didn't see him do handstands in his later years, but in his 40s and 50s, I saw him do do handstands, and like handstands on diving board. So it's like I don't feel ready to do anything like that at all. Um, and just shared moments of me trying to like remembering trying to do a handstand as a kid, him saying like, "No, you need to be more over your shoulders," and I was like, "Okay." It became this kind of family thing of wow, Dr. Angel Senior could do it. Now Dr. Angel Julie could do it. So that was kind of fun. Um, so interesting things were happening. This delayed gratification, this combination of fear and physical strength. Um, and what else was there? The question is, what does progress feel like when you're not sure of the direction? I think it. I think I did when I trust. I really trust. I'm all in. Like I'm. When I decide I'm all in with trust, I'm all in. So I just trusted the process. I knew there was progress. I had no idea of my timeline of at the end of the year what will happen. But I also knew through the year that I'd witnessed like if you just turn up, like sometimes it could be like, wow, I've just been doing the same thing for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I don't feel any different. And then I don't know, week, same. And then one day, boom, there's this there's this progress. So it was never, I didn't have an expectation of progress. I just welcomed it when it arrived and I acknowledged it and I celebrated it when it arrived. So I did a lot of happy dances. So, and this is something I've always done. And this is like a very childlike or youthful excitement of an achievement. And I remember doing my first like elbow pop up at with Mary Beth in North Carolina, and all you like no, I think it was the first time I ever did. I can't remember. It was the first time I did one, and then I think like a week later I got two in a row. And as soon as I come down, like I do this really like silly happy dance, and it's not a silly happy dance. Well, it's silly because it's fun, but I also think it's really really important because if you don't acknowledge your successes, um how do you why would you be motivated to have more of them? Why would you be expecting to increase your self-esteem? Why would you have an expectation that your confidence might grow through your achievements if you don't even acknowledge them? And I think there's such a blur for some people between oh, are you just showing off? Oh, are you a narcissist? Or what about like I just worked really fucking hard and I'm celebrating it, or like that felt good. Like this moment of I didn't think I'd ever be able to do that, or I didn't know when I'd be able to do that. And here's the reality of I did that, and that should be celebrated. And I know, like I say, there's like, oh, have a certificate because you turned up, da da da. But when you've earned something, and I earned those celebrations. I earned that, like when you start to get the feeling of, oh my god, I'm upside down, I'm holding myself here, like that feels extraordinary. The first time you surf and you stand up and you ride a wave, you're like, oh my God. It's a new feeling. It's this phenomenology, this experience of, I've never experienced this before. I've been moving in a direction towards it, but you don't know it till you know it. You don't experience it until you experience it. To acknowledge, like, this was new, this is something, this is a cool thing. Like, it's cool to be cool, but it's also really cool to acknowledge and to celebrate. And you can be stoic all day long, but even inside you're doing a little like so again, maybe that's just me, maybe that's my style. Um but it was genuinely joyful to accomplish these things. So one of the hardest things I think that happened, so in terms of, I want to directly Damien's thing of yeah, what do you feel if you're, what does progress feel like when you're not sure of the direction? I didn't worry about the direction. You were my map, you were my guide. Direction wasn't something I had to be responsible for. All I had to be responsible for was to take responsibility for showing up, to be honest in my effort and my achievements and my feedback and my communication. Because also I could have maybe pretended that things were going better when they were. I could have said that I was training when I wasn't. But what the hell's the point in that? And so direction, and I think, like, sounds cheesy, but like that's why like what I do is the map system, because I don't want someone to have to worry about the direction. Like, I've got that covered. Damien, as my coach, you had me covered. Also, maybe it's connected. Personally, I have a terrible sense of direction. Like it's still, I remember an ex-boyfriend going, like, honestly, like, seriously, you don't know where we are? And I'll be like, no. And he's like, you honestly, like, go through the world like you're stoned the whole time. I'm like, I just don't know where we are a lot of the time. Or it takes me, the only, Plymouth, my home city in Devon, is the only place I will ever really know in terms of finding my way around. It's, I was told it's kind of like a dyslexia, like my directional thing. I don't know. I take in a lot of information and I can see things and I can recall them, but I cannot link them together. Make of that what you will. So, maps, guides, love them, trust them. Had a lifetime of experience. And in alignment with that is the practice of asking for help. I do this in department stores, I do it in hotels. The only thing that's bad is that I can only remember 3 things. And as soon as someone gives me more than 3 directions, I giggle. And then I feel really bad because they're being really helpful. And they're like, so you go to the end of the run, you want to stay left, and then you want to go around the corner. But when you get to the T junction, you want to do that. But then you're going to go straight across the roundabout, and then you're going to see a blue barn. And when you turn it, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done, and thank you so much. And I just know that, like, okay, I'm gonna have to find someone else, like, before I get to the blue barn, because it's gone. Anyway, you wouldn't have thought I have a high IQ, would you? But there you go. These are the daily struggles of Julie's world. So, direction, not a problem. So, Damien asks, is there a lesson to be learned in giving yourself over to a process? Yes, 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 yes. The lesson to be learned about giving yourself over to a process is you conserve energy. The energy people spend worrying about the process, worrying about directions that someone else who knows way more, is way more experienced, is the expert in. It's like being the backseat driver. It's like, it's way more tiring. It's not efficient. It's a waste of energy. It instills anxiety. So if you can trust, if both in yourself and your coach, you will get there so much quicker, because your energy is just spent on the reality of taking radical responsibility for showing up, being honest, but the value is also in the feedback loop. If you don't communicate, your motivation is going to be less, because you're not going to get the feedback. You're not going to get the connection with someone who actually cares whether you get it or not. So when I would do, like, film my progress and send it to Damien and be like, oh, I just got this, I can't believe it. And he would see the happy dance. And I would write and say, like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this today. And his reply was genuine in his joy for my progress. And I know that as a coach myself, when someone says, like, oh my God, I did this thing today, I read it and I say to them, like, I'm smiling so much listening to that, because there's a physical empathy when you're someone who's gone through a process and you know what it means to go through a process. When you start with a like, I have no idea where this is going to go. I've never imagined me being someone who can do that. And I've been through that with a pull up. I've been through that with a rope climb. I've been through that. I don't think I even thought about it with a 10K run. I think I was just never really motivated to run for an hour for a sprint, but I did it. And then I never thought I would be someone who could do a handstand in that way. So it was like, wow. And then once you go through one of those things, you start to realize this whole limited belief thing is really bullshit. And you can transfer that into other aspects of your life because your training doesn't exist in in a vacuum, both physically and mentally. So the emotional thoughts you have around what you think you're capable of doing, how you think you're going to show up, why you somehow think that you're so special that all the things that work for all the other people with all the processes aren't going to work for you is kind of beyond me with a lot of people. Very few people are so exceptional that when they don't do the thing consistently. And here's the thing, if you're the guide, if you are the map holder, if you're the person with the system of the maps, then you know there's always a different reroute. You can always reroute someone if they're like, well, I've been moving house this week and I'm really tired and I haven't slept, or I'm taking care of my dogs and I don't know what's going on with them, but da 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 da. Or a friend in her handstand journey just had a climbing fall and has injured her elbow, so that's going to change things for her. You can always return to something, and there will be roadblocks. There will be things that you need to reroute, and you need to be able to adapt. Like my journey went very smoothly, and I feel very fortuitous. But I was very intentional in when I was really tired and sore. I didn't do stuff. I didn't train. I would wait until I was fresh. And this is a whole thing. This is another little rant I may need to have as a separate thing, but I will just kind of dip my toe in the ocean of talk here right now. Is that I don't believe you should be continually waking up really sore and tired. And I think you can go to bed tired, but I think you need to wake up not tired and not sore. And if you are continually doing that, I think you're out of balance. And I don't think you will have the joy of movement for your life. And I was on a movement panel discussion recently at the Ancestral Health Symposium, and um, there was a differing view there, which was like, no, you need to break down, you need to do this, and yeah, you can do that. But if you're messaging people that they should be waking up sore as a measure of health, and that wasn't exactly what that person was saying, but this idea that you need to be continually sore, I'd be like, no, you don't. And also, I remember when the second generation of parkour practitioners, people like Stefan Vigru and Thomas Quidic and Johan Vigru, Kazuma moved to London. And so these guys had this, incredible, like they were just, their movement was different. It was different from anyone who'd been trying to learn over the internet and do their things. And what they couldn't believe was they were like, everyone's injured. What's wrong with you all? And so they basically told people to be strong resting. They were like, you're overtraining relative to your capacity of where you're at right now. And it was true. Like Steph and Kaz and Tomada, they weren't messed up. And yet the majority of the London-based practitioners kind of were all carrying injuries. I mean, some of those guys had injuries, yes, like they'd be one off and they would heal, but these kind of ongoing injuries. So if I felt sore, I wouldn't push through and train. I would wait until I wasn't sore. And sometimes you're not sore, but you're just exhausted. And that's another body communication that you need to be aware of. So it was all just kind of life imbalance. And I'm going through menopause. Like I'm in menopause. So my estrogen is down. I'm not on any hormone replacement therapy. And I built a load of muscle and I got a handstand in a year because I was strong resting, because I had a coach, because I was balanced, I had a guide, I trusted in the process. I did all those things. And there's nothing special in that. So the continuity, the staying on point, the doing that, there's a checking in of how do I feel? And on the days where I wouldn't do the handstands, I would be walking, I would be doing other things. Maybe I would swim, maybe I would just nap, maybe I would be taking care more of like, oh, I'm just gonna, maybe I need to eat some more. Maybe I mean my food's good, but like my chocolate ice cream intake is that's a flexible one during different seasons. Where I'm recording this in ice cream season right now. So yeah, giving yourself over to a process is really efficient in terms of time and what you have to worry about. Where are you putting your energy? Because it's not limitless. If you have a guide, trust them. If you don't trust yourself, have that conversation. Think about why. So what else? There's so many things happened in this year of handstands. The delayed gratification, the continuity, the fun, the joy. Some drills were, and I still to this day when I go back to them, it's like, oh, that's demanding. So to walk back up the wall and stay there for 1 minute. This was kind of a benchmark of, okay, now you pass into like level 3 of the video game of 4 or 5 levels. And it's a great strength drill. And I got to really appreciate the strength and the balance and the role my mind played within this. So when it got to the point where I could kick up and then kind of bring the legs together and I would get a taste of the whole. This was like crack cocaine because it's like, oh, I want more of it. And time is not consistent. Time when you're in that position, and it's kind of crazy. Even though, like we walk on our feet, so our feet our ankle joints are holding our whole body up. Well, like this isn't very big. The wrist isn't that big, and yet you're just there. And there is so much going on when you're there. Learning how to breathe when I was there. Learning how to use the fingers to stabilize and steer my whole body. I remember doing a workshop a couple of years ago, and there was like a 20-minute handstand section, and someone saying like, when I would kick up, and they'd say, "Oh, you need to move your hips forward," and it'd be like, "I'm upside down. I've no idea where my hips are. I don't know what's forward, back, left, right, round." I didn't know. So this whole proprioception of that, where to put the eyes, when to breathe, how to breathe, what are you looking at? What are you thinking about? Are you counting it? There were a few times when my neighbors where I was living, where I would do the practice outside, there was a very nice large space. There was some funny kind of aging interactions that happened. At one point when I was at a kind of like 7, 8 seconds, I remember there was a guy working on one of the apartments upstairs, and I was in a hold. I was holding the handstand, and he shouted like, "Wow, that's really good!" And then when I came up, I was like, "Oh, thank you so much! Like, I'm really happy with it." And he went like, "Oh, but I thought you were 17 or 18." And I realized like, "Oh, you can't see my face when I'm upside down." Another funny thing that would happen a few times is because I was filming myself so that I could see my line, I could see where am I when it works, where am I when I can have that hold. And it was always guys. Not once did a woman say anything snarky to me. There was an older woman who lived nearby who would walk past and she would see me. She would celebrate me. She would say like, "Oh, my grandkids do that all day long," or people would be surprised that I was practicing on concrete. I'd much rather have a hard surface. I don't really like doing it on grass. I'm comfortable to fall. That's one of part of the process, is how do you come out of the move when, because you're not going to be perfectly in balance, like going up, and perfectly in balance coming down, especially when you're learning. So, but I like the feedback in the same way I like running on hard surfaces, because I get feedback that allows my body to correct and know where and how I should be. But yeah, there were some snarky guys, and they would be like, "Oh, you're filming that for Instagram," or like, "Oh, is that for your fans?" And at one point, I just wanted to go, "Fuck you," really badly. And there was one day, and I'd done a really long hold. Like it was something I was really proud of. And I came down, and there was a guy sat in his truck, who's I think a gardening contractor from the building opposite. And he said, "Oh, is that as good as you can do? Really? Really? That's what you've got to say about that? Really? You do that? You do that?" That was the approach he expected. So yeah, the kind of mansplaining thing, that was kind of shitty. But it was interesting. And then I had a neighbor of mine, and every time I would do one, he would just go, "Right on, right on." But generally people kind of would mock or try to be funny, and not realize, like, this is really fucking hard. Like, this is my effort. This is really, they would have no physical empathy for what I was doing. And that's fine, because I don't think they could do it. And so physical empathy really matters. And it was really nice to kind of have that through the support of Damien as well. So I have one more question that someone person I realized, like, wow, I really have a lot to say about this handstand journey. So a friend says, "I'd be curious about your own experience of consistency and flexibility in relationship to the practice." So yeah, that's just the reframe. Just check in. Have you been active in your life? Are you active again? And I had a friend who, I think she started this and then stopped, and then said, "No, but I want to do the whole year." But she wouldn't be starting at day one anyway. And it was like, well, we just go, why not just meet yourself where you're at? And that's really a key foundation to it, is that regardless of what I would be set, I would show up. And you can only do what you can do in the moment at which you're doing it. You can't physically do the thing, even if your mind's like, "Yeah, but last week I held it for this number of seconds." It's like, but this is what you've got to deal with now. So being present and being honest and having the intention of meeting yourself where you're at in your training, taking that kind of inventory of, well, I'm just going to show up and see how this feels. And it's weird. Sometimes, like, the first handstand is the longest, and other times it's like, I would do, I don't know, say 25 kick-ups or whatever, and then it'd be like, and I would always, this would go back to kind of Yamakasi philosophy. It would be like, no, I'm always going to dedicate the last one to someone. And then sometimes that last one, that would be the hold. That would be the one. And then I also started to play with, well, what if I face a different direction? What if the light's coming that way? And then I would get the shadows would mess me up. I was like a donkey in terms of my sensitivity to the environment. And then being in different environments, and then the difference between doing it outside my door to then going and training on the cliff top, which felt kind of very public to do it, about being in a park. And I think that the comments that I got from people when I was training sort of delayed that a little bit, in terms of, I don't want to deal with anyone's shitty thoughts about what I'm doing. Like, my movement's mine. This is my story. This is my journey. And some people just feel obliged to say something, and I'm just, you don't have to. You can you just be quiet. Like, leave me alone. So yeah, consistency in the practice, and don't waste your energy on trying to create your own process. Let someone else take care of that. Follow a program, follow a plan. But the feedback and support and accountability, the delayed gratification, the relationship between strength and fear and how we embody that, and the crossover, huge. So, still to this day, when I look at myself on a clip doing a handstand, kind of like, wow, that's me doing that. That's crazy. That's crazy. Like, wow, I can handstand. And then also, I have friends who do amazing handstands. So this is my journey. This is where I'm at. I don't know how it'll continue or not. I would like to keep my continuity of having this available to me because it's fun. And now I'm challenged with how do I breathe when I'm upset? So sipping on air is a new project, and sipping on air while staying contracted and relaxed. So I'm going to cut it off for there because it's been way longer than I thought it would be. So thank you so much for listening. I would like to have Damien on the podcast and talk about many different things. But if there are questions about this and his 365 days to a handstand, he did it on Facebook, and then it's now available on his YouTube channel for free. And I know for people who have started this year that if you message Damien, he will help you on your way. And so thank you, Damien. Thank you for being an amazing coach. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for celebrating. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your journey. And thank you to Remy as well, because had you guys not presented this as a fun thing to do, I wouldn't have been so into it. So thank you so much. The journey continues. Thank you for listening.